Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, this is Brian Spann, your guest host, aka the Spann Man of CoachLeah's After the Whistle. Look, we're so glad that you've decided to get on in and just join with us today on our broadcast live stream. And I'm telling you, today is an awesome day. We just want to welcome each and every one of you. You've taken time out of your schedules to come and join in with us on CoachLeah's After the Whistle. Listen, we've got some great things going on today. Got a heavy topic, heavy hitter that we brought on as a guest on the show today. And look, I just want you to sit back and relax and enjoy yourself. You know, turn your computer on if you can. If you're in a hot area, turn the AC on and just chill out and enjoy today's live stream. I want to give a big shout out to CoachLeah, who is the host of CoachLeah's After the Whistle. And thank you, CoachLeah, for allowing me to be your guest host. Everybody, she's on break again this week, but we're looking forward to come back full throttle on the next episode. I'm looking forward to seeing CoachLeah back on the show. But I'm very thankful to be the guest host as we get ready to start this program today. And look, everybody, we got some trending topics coming up. But before we get deep into it, one of the trending topics I want you to think about, I want you to go back to the conversation with Al McFarlane weekdays at 1 p.m. Central Time and on demand at YouTube. This is at youtube.com at Insight News MN. Remember, youtube.com at Insight News MN /stream. We're going to say it again, youtube.com / at Insight News MN /streams. And this is the conversation with Al McFarlane weekdays at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Look, we've got to talk about something in our topics. Did you know that 70 to 80% of the people in America are considered magnesium deficient? And this is something we really need to think about because your mental health, other areas of health, it's about 68 different diseases that they're saying is acquainted with the fact that there's low magnesium in our bodies. And there's certainly many ways you can deal with magnesium. And, you know, my wife and I, my wife talked about this in the first episode of CoachLeah's After the Whistle. And she discussed and talked about low magnesium and how if you pull your magnesium into your body the correct way, how it can correct some of the health issues. Of course, you know, not doctors, but definitely talking about wellness. But we want you to think about this. Do your research. Now, there are several ways you can absorb magnesium into your body. But one of the ways I found was the topical way. So I want you to go and think about looking up some of the other topical magnesiums that are out here. I want you to think about one that I use all the time, which is the Crawley Wellness Magnesium. And I found that on www.crawleywellness.com. So if you want to get a good reference from someone like myself who likes to use topical magnesium, go to www. One of those locations that you can check for topical magnesium. Listen, there's been an extraordinary twist in the news. This is something that just kind of blew my mind. But the University of Nebraska set a new record for women's sports attendance with a whopping 92,003 fans filling the Lincoln Memorial Stadium, which is usually reserved for football, if you can see on the screen. It's usually reserved for football, but the stage was set for an epic NCAA volleyball showdown last week. And the University of Nebraska hosted the University of Nebraska Omaha in a historic University of Nebraska Omaha, an historic crowd-blowing occasion. And despite the massive audience, the home team didn't falter, securing the victory with a dominant sets of 25-14, 25-14 again, and 25-13. And this remarkable event marked a milestone in women's sports, showcasing the immense passion and support for collegiate volleyball. 92,003 fans. Can you imagine how many people you can even hold in your home for Thanksgiving meal? So I want you all to just think about, you know, imagine being in a stadium with 92,003 people. But look, on with the show, everybody, because I don't want to hold up your time because we have an interesting person that's going to be with us today. I want you to sit back and relax, but I just want to give you a little information about him. We're talking about none other than Mr. Sean Lumpkin, who is a former former American football safety in the NFL for the New Orleans Saints, and who was drafted from the University of Minnesota. And while at Minnesota, Lumpkin played 4 years, and he accrued numerous awards. In 1990, he accrued the All Big Ten First Team. He had the Bronco Nagurski Award, where he was the team MVP, and the Carl Eller Award. He was also considered the outstanding defensive player. He was also a captain. And Sean Lumpkin was the 106th player selected in the 1992 NFL Draft and played 67 games for the New Orleans Saints between 1992 and 1996. And then he was later released by the Saints in 1997. Now, Sean is a homie. Now, you notice lately we've been dealing with the Minnesota area. And Sean is it grew up in the South Minnesota area, or South Minneapolis area, rather. And he graduated from Benilde St. Margaret's School, where he was one of a handful of the notable alumni. And so Sean had made a statement. He said, look, when my NFL Sunday game days ended after 5 years, he said, I thought, now, what in the world am I going to do with my life? He said, I searched for a fulfilling career, fulfilling career change after hanging up the cleats. Small business owners in the clothing industry, wholesale and direct sales, institutional pharmaceutical sales of anti-infectives, supporting infectious disease specialists. He said they called his middle name First Down. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome on the show today, Mr. Sean Lumpkin.
How you doing? How you doing, Brian? Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I'm trying to think back. You're listing a few of those, and just, time's going by. Time's going by.
Man, we're glad to have you on the show. Excuse me for my stuttering, but you got an impressive resume, man. I had a chance to look at your resume, and I see that you do a lot. Now I feel like I introduced you, but I don't think anyone can introduce you better like you could introduce yourself. So how would you introduce yourself right now?
Oh, I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah. So I grew up in South Minneapolis, and I want to thank Leah for reaching out to me. She was like an older sister to me when I was growing up. Me and her younger brother, Corey, we used to, ball at everything back at McCray Park, South Minneapolis. That's where it all started for us. And so I'm glad and honored to be part of her program here. And so, but when it comes to what I'm doing now, people meet me. I just try to stay positive, yes, and have fun with my life, try to live my life to the fullest. I started out, like I said, South Minneapolis. I was the youngest of four. My two older sisters, Teresa and Dawn, and then my older brother, Eugene. Gene and I were closer in age, and I was always just trying to make everyone laugh and be funny. I thought I was always a good athlete. I didn't know how good of an athlete I'd eventually grow up to be. But the one thing about it was I was fortunate to be in my neighborhood, South Minneapolis. We had a lot of good athletes. That's why I didn't really think too much beyond playing football in the street and playing up in McCray Park, because everyone was good. Everyone was fast. I started track in high school in 10th grade. I waited so long because I never was that fast. I couldn't even beat the girls in my neighborhood. so I didn't even bother to run for track because I thought I was too slow. And so, but all that changed, and I got older, and I was fortunate where my dad, he always told me, he would always tell me, he'd call me a natural. He'd always say, "You're a natural." And I'd be like, "Dad, what you talking about? You're natural. Just whatever you do, you go do it. You're just a natural at it." And so I just kind of took it. And that's one thing too. I always just stayed positive. I mean, my mom and my dad, that was one thing. My mom always said, "Be a leader, not a follower."
Yes, sir.
And I just kind of went with that. But I was always trying to impress my older brothers and my sister. My sister Dawn, she was always on me and keeping me straight on everything. And so we ended up moving to Golden Valley in 8th grade. My mom got remarried. My stepdad really changed the game for me. It was real positive change for us. And I ended up going to Benil St. Margaret's. So I wanted to go somewhere different. My brother went to De La Salle. My older sister, Dawn, she went to Holy Angels. My mom said, you're not going to a public school. So I had to settle on Benil St. Margaret's. And I didn't do any sports. To be honest, I didn't do any sports at Benil, 9th grade. I was a hockey player. That's all I did.
Wow.
6th grade through 10th grade. I actually quit football. I quit everything in 6th grade. All I wanted to do was play hockey. Kind of crazy. I wanted to play for the Minnesota North Stars. Kind of crazy. And so, but things I started getting a little taller, started getting a little bigger and faster, and things just clicked when I was going into 10th grade. I quit hockey, and I'll be honest, I was in gym class, and we had to run out on the field for gym. And usually I was always the fastest one, but I had a couple of these young dudes, they beat me in a little sprint, and I was like, oh hell no, that ain't gonna happen. And so I went out for track, got in the weight room, and things just started developing from there. I was fortunate enough to come across a couple coaches that helped out at Benil St. Margaret's. A guy by the name of Terry LeCount, played wide receiver. I think he played at Florida State, played for the Vikings for a minute. I had Jarvis Redwine, running back from Nebraska. I don't know who they knew at Benil St. Margaret's because a small little private Catholic school, but they were there. And John Turner, JT, helped out in track, showed me technique, showed me some things. And after 10th grade, when I started playing football again, I got in the weight room. Jarvis Redwine, he pulled me aside and just said, hey, Lumpkin, come here. And I said, yeah. He said, you like football? I said, oh yeah. And he said, you know what? I want to help you. You got to get stronger, and we're gonna work on your speed. If you really want to play football, because you have a little talent, I'm gonna help you. And he stuck to it. He kept his word, got me in the weight room, and literally every step of the way, he gave me tips and pointers. And then to this day, one of the men at Benil St. Margaret's, a man by the name of Will Ola, he's still there to this day.
Wow.
He was in that weight room because he worked at Benil. He was in that weight room with me every day after school, and we put in work. And so that was kind of the stepping stones that I took, and track. And that was one thing my coach, where I always was positive. I always had a positive outlook on things. And I know some of the older folks looking at this show, and I know you would be familiar. When we were growing up, there was a show called Candid Camera.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that show had a big influence on me because I always figured there was a hidden camera on me somewhere, and I didn't know where, but I was going to do something, and I was going to do something big, and I was going to do something great because I knew that camera was on somewhere, somehow. And I always thought, it seems kind of crazy, but that's kind of how I wanted to live my life. I'm like, hey, I'm going to have my candid camera moment, and they're going to catch me doing something great. And so I just took that with me, and I put in the work. I saw a little ad in the paper after 10th grade, football camp, University of Minnesota, back in the day when we had newspapers.
Yes.
And I saw this little clip, and I went on home. I went and I showed my mom, showed my stepdad, and I said, hey, I'd like to go to this overnight camp. And it was over in Sanford Hall at the University of Minnesota. And they went ahead and helped me get signed up for this camp.
Wow.
And then that's when things all changed up. I had, Corey, Leah's younger brother. He went to the camp too. Me and all my boys in South Minneapolis, Henry Rucker,
Uh-huh.
we all did our thing. Jesse Delina, we all did our thing. Derek Rubin. Derek Rubin, he was Minnesota Mr. Basketball. This was my great part. We were all athletes. We just didn't know how good we were, but turns out we were a pretty good group of athletes.
Man, y'all had a
And
treasure.
so,
Y'all had a
what's that?
treasure group. You had a treasure
Oh,
check
yeah,
neighborhood.
Mr. Crowder had us going. Mr. Solomon had us going for football. Mr. Crowder had us for basketball, and we did our thing. So that's kind of what I did. And then I just formulated a little plan because I always knew I was a good athlete, just didn't know exactly how
Yeah.
good of an athlete I was.
Mm-hmm.
But I did track and football, went to the camp, and I just put in work, and I took everything to heart. Terry LeCount showed me some sprint techniques, JT and Jarvis. And next thing you know, I got faster, I got bigger, and I got stronger. And I went with it. I was always a decent student because obviously Benilde St. Margaret's it's a challenging school, but I always knew I wasn't going to be some rocket scientist or doctor or anything like that. But I was a decent student, but I saw the light at the end of the road saying, "Hey, I'm going to maximize my abilities, get into college, and get a scholarship and roll with that." And so I put everything, all my efforts into that to
Well,
really make something happen.
well, seeing that you have such a core in the Minneapolis area, and I can see how things. How I can basically just see in my mind. I'm sure the viewers can how you grew up and what life was like for you in Minneapolis. Uh, and I see how you got in the sports scene. I see you said that you were into hockey, and then all of a sudden, these things happen, and it's funny how things inspire us. Now, moving forward out of graduating from college and going into the pros, I see that you were the 106th player that was selected in the 1992 NFL draft to the Saints. What was it like to go through that draft process?
I still think they made a mistake. They picked 100 before me. That was a mistake, but it's all good. It's all good. Um, just getting ready. To be honest,
Mhm.
going through that process in college, and you go in and everyone has that idea. Hey, I want to be the man. I want to make it in a league. I didn't necessarily have that idea when I first got to the University of Minnesota. Again, I was blessed, fortunate. I had Coach John Gudikins. He recruited me, offered me my scholarship. It was the only Division one A school that offered me a scholarship for football. And so, but I looked at it as an opportunity to be able to play. That was Metrodome was still fairly new, really nice to be able to play in front of your friends and family in the Metrodome. And so I looked forward to that. And you said just the beginning of the show, what's it like to play in front of 90,000 people? Metrodome wasn't 90,000 people, but we were able to play in Michigan, etc. And it's a rush like you can't believe. And so I just went in and said, "Hey, I'm just blessed. I'm so happy to be here." And I always had a smile on my face. My teammates would laugh at me. No, what you smiling about? What you laughing about? And I'm just like, "Yeah, hey, we're playing in the Metrodome. Look at all these folks, man. They come and watch us play. I'm happy to be here." And I just rolled with it. And I always had a smile on my face. But once I said NFL, there was a practice over at our facility, and the Vikings practiced. And I walked in after I was working out downstairs, and I went in and I watched their practice a little bit. And I was watching some of the fellas practice. Joey Browner, um, Mike Merriweather, they were in their practices, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, wow, these dudes aren't any bigger than me. There was just a couple of them that were crazy fast, but overall, I was like, I could do this. I could do that. That was after my freshman year. I watched them practice, and then I just put it in my head. I know I can do this. And that inspired me to go ahead. And then I really kind of started thinking the NFL. This was after my freshman year at the U. And I just put in work, started grinding. And I knew I could do that. And so one thing led to another. A lot of it is being blessed, having a little bit of luck, because injuries, one play, you're done. I had a little scare sophomore year, but I was able to overcome that. But my number one focus was, I know I'm good enough to get in this league. I know I can do it. I didn't know where. I got that call on draft day, day one, because that was back we had 12 rounds. And I got that call from Jim Miller from New Orleans Saints. The first thing he said was, "This is Jim Miller, New Orleans Saints. We just drafted you." I said, "I appreciate it, Mr. Miller." And he said, what do you know about the New Orleans Saints?" And I said, "Nothing. I don't know anything about them, but I'm going to find out." And he said, "All right, we're sending you off FedEx you a ticket, and you're going to find out a lot about New Orleans Saints." And I said, "I appreciate it. I'll see you tomorrow." And that's kind of how it all started, because obviously up here we don't really see many New Orleans Saints games. Now we do, but back then we didn't. So I didn't know anything about them, but it didn't matter to me. I said I knew I was good enough to get in the league. It didn't matter what team or where, but I knew I could do it, especially after watching the Vikings practice.
Now, now you had an extensive career for a few years. I believe you, after the release in '97, and, you know, when you deal with NFL football, you know, when you're a child, you see the professional players, you think the glitz, the glamour, you know, the injuries, the comebacks. But after your final time with the Saints, what was your final whistle moment?
My final whistle moment didn't come as a big surprise to me, because I always had put it in my mind that it was a temporary situation.
Mm-hmm.
I always just viewed it like that, because one play away, I've seen so many fellas, one play, career over. I saw it in college. I saw it in the pros. And so I always looked at it as a temporary situation. My moment came on the off season. Mike Ditka was down in New Orleans, and he was looking to clean house, etc. And so I had plantar fasciitis. I had the tendon in my foot, and he had us run 40s on that off season. It was the beginning of June, and something snapped in my foot. I couldn't walk, and that little letter was in my locker. That next day, I went to treatment, came back. That next day from the hotel, coach would like to see you. And I went in, and all he said was, we decided to go in a different direction, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, "Hey, coach, do what you got to do." You know, he didn't know me, didn't know anything about me. It was an off season. He said a lot of this, a lot of that, you know, giving guys a fair look, blah, blah, blah. I said, "Coach, do what you got to do," because I always had it in my mind it was going to be a temporary situation. Fortunate, I was able to get 5 years in, started a couple of years, had a great time, got my pension, etc. Then that was that aha moment. I got on the plane, came on back home to Minnesota, and figured out some things what I wanted to do. And that's kind of when I made that next stage. That last year I played, I was already kind of in the clothing business with my brother. My brother's a clothing designer, Eugene, had his clothing line, and, you know, put a little shameless plug in for him now. He's got a brand new clothing line. He lives over in Belgium, like in Brussels. But I was getting some sales experience from that, and I just figured, hey, this is the moment here. I did try to rehab, and I worked out for the Vikings, worked out for a couple teams, but the leg just wasn't back the same. So I officially retired in '98. But I wasn't overly shocked. I wasn't overly depressed. I was ready to make that next move from that next chapter in my life, because I always thought, you know, like my mom had always said, be a leader, not a follower, go to school, get that degree. I went ahead and finished up and got that degree. And that was one thing too, that a lot of young athletes, they want to be the man, they want to go pro. You always have to give yourself options, and that's what getting that degree was. And I just remember my stepdad had always told me, he said, doesn't matter what you get your job in, it doesn't matter. You just have to have your degree because they're going to train you anyway. And he was 100% right. He was 100% right. And here I am today doing pharmaceutical sales.
Let me ask you this, because after hearing this, I can assume my own answer, but I want to make sure I'm hearing. After the whistle moment, did you even know it was coming? Did you really know that was?
Not necessarily, because I'm an optimist, and I knew on that off season that I was still kind of rehabbing. I had a hamstring, I had that plantar fasciitis, et cetera. And then we had this new coaching staff come in, Ditka, et cetera, and he was, saying this and that, and we're gonna redo this. Everyone is on a clean slate. Everyone's gonna get the chance. So I didn't really think too much about it. I was just doing like I always do, put in work. You got to put in work. And then when I snapped the tendon in my foot, he didn't wait no time. The next day, boom, we decided to go in a different direction. So then that's when I always heard stories. I always knew it was all about business. I had one teammate, actually, I was fortunate to play in New Orleans that last year with Carl Lee from the Vikings. He was at that time, he was like our old school wisdom leader in the locker room. And I remember watching him practice when I was at the U, my freshman year at the U, when I was watching him in our complex, watching him and Joey Brown. And here he was, my teammate now. And he gave me just a lot of wisdom and whatnot, and just said, hey, that day, it's a game of attrition. That day's going to come. Just give yourself options. And it eventually came. And the NFL is business. It's all business. It's not college. Coach Mora, that's what he said. My rookie year, there was 22 of us. We finished our last practice before our last preseason game. He pulled all the draft choices and free agents. And he just said, fellas, you had a good camp. Good luck. We're going to this last game. There's 22 of you. After tomorrow night's game, I'm only keeping 5 of you. Good luck. I'll see you on the plane. Take care. And he walked away. It was all business. It was all business.
And it is. That's the kind of business it is. And I've got friends that play in the NFL. Some, I know one in particular, Irv Smith, that was your teammate. He and I are good friends.
That's my boy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've heard a lot of stories, and you have to have a plan. You have a plan. And I heard that you mentioned something after the whistle moment. Now you're into pharmaceutical sales. So what have you done to have consistent success in the pharmaceutical industry for the last 25 years?
Oh man, it's, for one, like I said, I'm an optimist. In sales, you have to have just the personality, but you have to be able to persevere too, because you're dealing with a lot of attitudes and different personalities that you come across. And being in pharmaceutical sales, a lot of it, especially when I first started, I'm going in trying to talk to some of these physicians, and a lot of times these physicians that I'm coming across, they were some of the smartest people in the room. They were some of the brightest students in the room. And here I am coming in trying to talk to them, to influence them to prescribe something. They didn't know me from Adam. I didn't go to medical school. So in a way, it could be a little intimidating in the beginning, but I'm an optimist. I'm confident, and I was always up for I still am. I'm always up for the challenge, and I like to face my fears head on. And so that's the attitude that I took. And I'll never forget one of my first managers when I first started. For one, they armored you with the knowledge, just like my stepdad had told me. They're going to train you for whatever position you get. They're going to train you. And they did definitely train me. It was almost like I went to pharmacy school, like a pharmacist. So it was nice to be able to be rep with this knowledge to go in. But again, I wasn't a physician. And then day one, I go and I have to try to talk to and influence a physician that's been a doctor for 10, 15, 20 years. So that was a little intimidating. But my first manager just said, hey, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And he said, always remember what we were selling. We were very specific on what we were selling. I had just a few specific type of drugs, a specific disease state. He said, remember, you're an expert on this specific thing. That doctor, he could be a doctor for 15, 20 years. He's never heard of this particular drug. He's never heard of the side effects, etc. You're the expert at it. Just remember that. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. Just take your time and be able to answer those questions confidently, because they armored me and wrapped me with that knowledge. And I just took it day by day like that. And just stay positive, because you definitely have some egos and attitudes. And that's one thing. It can go in one ear and out the other. I did have to make that shift from playing sports. Someone says something, you got to check them. But in pharmaceuticals, you can't do that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I laugh like this because I have a 26-year background in medicine. I worked in Duke University, and I've worked in medicine with managed clinics, and I used to deal with the pharmaceutical reps coming to the office. And I know what you're talking about the pride issues and crossing the lines. And, it's strange that when you work in this field, yes, you're not a doctor, but by working with them, you end up acquiring a lot of their knowledge. Same thing in the field that you're in. You have knowledge on things that the doctors are in need of, and they won't have knowledge of that drug unless you share that with them. So it's a partnership, just like the quarterback and the running back. You got to play together in order to win the game. And looking at this, how has the pharmaceutical sales industry affected you personally?
It's affected me obviously I've made a career out of it. It's positive effect in that way, where I was able to make a 180 shift change in my life, where before, I was able to play 5 years in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But that was one thing. I was always up for a challenge, and I didn't necessarily wanted to be known as just, oh, you're Sean Lumpkin, the football player. Pharmaceuticals allowed me to be able to have another chapter, totally different, to be able to go down that road and just, continue to gain the knowledge. Every day is learning. And that's one thing in pharmaceutical sales, especially what I do. I sell IV antibiotics. It's always evolving, always changing. So that's the education part. And I like that. I'm up for that challenge, and I like always gaining. So it's helped me. I love being a dad, and I have my kids where I try to give them the tools to be in the best position to win. And that's what pharmaceuticals, I think, has forced me to always continue to better myself and educate myself. And I try to pass some of those different tidbits off to my kids. And so far, I think I'm doing all right. And I'm just going to continue that, because that's why they call it in the medical field CME, continuing medical education, because it's always continuing.
That's true.
So I translate that into my life.
Yeah, and our physicians are still called practicing physicians. It's an ever learning world, because the human body is one of the most great wonders that are in the earth, if I can say it like that. It's strange how the human body works and what we're made of and what it takes to replenish the strength back into it. And I think you may have heard me talk about magnesium at the top of the show. Is magnesium a hot topic in your pharmaceutical world? And if it is, how?
Not necessarily in my direct world.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have heard about it. My wife, she's definitely on me to increase some of my magnesium. Hey, I always have different ailments, and different. I need some sort of anti-inflammatories, etc. So she's always in my ear on that. But me in my direct world, not anything direct with magnesium.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you what, it is a hot topic. I know with me, I have some of those old athletic wounds too. So I get the picture, as you say. Uh, Tell me, now you mentioned something about your son in athletics.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more about him, and has he had his extraordinary high school, college, career, or anything like that? Even after that, tell me a little bit more about your son.
Oh man, okay, yeah, yeah, like got the picture. So that's my family there. So my wife Tracy, again, I'm fortunate and blessed. She's put up with me for a little while here. And then I have my daughter there in the middle, Sierra, my one and only. She's my little, I call her, she's my little button. And then Sanjay, the tall one there, he went and sprouted up, and he had his career, and he's still building up. I'll get into details on that with Sanjay. And then on the end is my main man, my young man, Xavier. So he's the senior this
Beautiful.
year at Benilde St. Mark. So they all three went to Benilde. Not pictured as my stepson, Nathan. He's the oldest. He's 32 now. So he's living overseas. He was in Taipei, and now he's in Spain. Just moved to Spain and traveling the world doing his thing. So Sanjay, that was where I always, again, I'm an optimist, and when he was born, I found out, or not when he was born, when I found out he was going to be coming to the world. We were playing the Houston Oilers, and right away, I didn't, we didn't know the sex or nothing. I just said, I know it's going to be a boy, and I'm naming him Houston because I know he's going to be a bad man. And I said, I don't care where it's going to be. He's going to be Houston. And I knew he was going to do great things. He's a scratch golfer. He got recruited for golf. He did a lot of golf when he was younger. Still plays to this day with his uncles and his stepdad. They've had a lot of good influence. That again, blessed on that, where things just work out certain ways. Sanjay, his mom got remarried, and that was the one thing you always think, hey, if you get divorced, you get remarried, they got to treat your kids right, and that's one thing I'm blessed. His stepdad Jim Peterson, he's been real positive in Sanjay's life, and we're friends, and it's all good. I have nothing to complain about, and so he's fortunate where he did the golf thing. I had him start the football thing in 5th grade. He was my quarterback. He actually 3rd grade, and we played with 5th graders, and so I always knew he was an athlete. I always knew he had some skills. But I never wanted to be that kind of dad where just because I did this, he's going to do what I did. I just wanted to give him the tools to be successful, and whatever his endeavors were, I just wanted to be there to support it. And my attitude with all my kids were, I want them to do better than I ever did. I want them to be in a position to take whatever I did and go beyond. And so Sanjay, he ended up focusing on basketball, got out of football in 8th grade. And then he ended up, the golf thing, he got out of varsity in 10th grade. He just focused on basketball, ended up going to Northwestern, got a scholarship at Northwestern. He was captain, ended up getting the team to the first time school history to NCAA tournament, and they made it to the 2nd round, lost to Gonzaga. And so he ended up, the first team was kind of neat, where the first team was not the New Orleans Saints, but it was the New Orleans Pelicans, where the owner of the Saints owns the Pelicans. And so they took him for that summer league. So he was on the Pelicans team for that summer league. So that was pretty cool, where after his senior year, he started out his journey and went from there to overseas, and played overseas for a minute, and then went to the G League, played for Atlanta G League. And then COVID hit. They sent everybody home. He ended up getting his master's at Northwestern, and he wanted to still follow his dream of the NBA. And he ended up started out with the Utah Jazz, got a position there, and just kind of went up the ladder for a couple of years. And now he's down at where it started for him, the G League team that drafted him. He's actually with the Atlanta Hawks. So he's an assistant coach now for the Atlanta Hawks, where his mentor, the old coach from Utah, asked him to come follow him down there. And so he's living the dream right now, living his best life. But that was the thing. I always told him, always give yourself options and chase your dream. Sky's the limit. And he's running and making it the fullest. And so now we're on to my daughter. She's a freshman at Loyola Marymount University. She's going to play basketball. She won the state championship last year for Benil St. Margaret's for the basketball, and they were runner-up in the state championship for volleyball last year. And so she's decided to focus on basketball. And so, yeah, it was tough to drop my baby girl off last week, all the way out in LA. But she's gonna do some good things, and now we got our last one coming up, Xavier. So he's football and track, and so they just started out the game. They're off to a good start. They won 47-0 last week, so they're off to a good start. And
Sounds very impressive, man. I love.
See where it can take. See where they can take it. So I just want them, and I just want to be in their corner and just give them, like I said, put them in the position to win, stay positive, Tracy and I. And, you can't do anything alone. That's one thing I learned in life. I got from my parents, and now I pass it on. It's a natural thing to just tell my kids, like my dad told me, that you're a natural and you're a builder, and just keep building, and the sky's the limit.
Well, I'll tell you what, number one, you have a beautiful family, and the concepts and everything I love about that. I want to get back to what you're doing in pharmaceuticals real quickly, because I know how the pharmaceutical world works. I wanted to ask you, what diseases are you helping to treat right now?
Right now, I sell 3 IV antibiotics. One is called Delvance, another one is called Avicaz, and Taflaro. Don't really mean much to you, those names, but basically ours is specific on skin infections, MRSA, cellulitis, wounds, abscess, that sort of thing. So I have two for those situations. That's Delvance and Taflaro. And then I have Avicaz, and they're all IV. They're not oral, not pills. They're all IV antibiotics. So I call on inpatient in the hospitals and infusion centers. So basically, the Avicaz is the one where you get a hospital-acquired pneumonia, you get an intra-abdominal infection, kind of like Flip Saunders. He got that infection in the hospital, and one thing led to another, and because things can rapidly go down real quick. Not sure what he was treated with, but those are the type of situations where the drug that I have, they would introduce for dire situations and that sort of thing, and the ICU and that sort of thing. So, and that's one thing too, you asked me earlier, what is pharmaceuticals? How has it affected my life? And that's one where I look at where I can go in and every day and talk to physicians to be able to help them bring clinical information to them to be able to help support patients that literally, the patients that they see, they can literally die from the bacteria, and I have medicine that can help deter that. So I think it's kind of a powerful thing to be able to, and I'm blessed to be able to be in a position to be able to offer helpful information where I'm not just going in the office selling a widget or something and saying, hey, try this and it might help. I'm actually going in and talking to them about something that if they implement it, a lot of it can literally save someone's life. So that affects me, in a positive way, and just makes you realize, life is too short. And in some cases I have information helpful to prolong somebody's life. So.
So we have a couple of more. I've got about a couple of more minutes. I want to really home in on something, because you being an NFL player, a lot of kids grow up and, when they don't have a focus in life, they just see that, when you're young, I'm just going to be this, I'm going to be that. And you had something to fall back on. You did a pivot. What kind of advice do you have for this generation of pro athletes to have confidence in their abilities outside of sports?
I think I just go back to where it all, started with me, and I look at it, for one, you can't do it by yourself. You always need some support, some way, somehow. Someone is going to influence you. And I had my old teammate, rest in peace, Sam Mills, linebacker from the Saints. I remember we were out on the off season, and he just told me, "Hey, Sean, this can never last forever. Nothing lasts forever. Just one thing: don't ever forget what you did to get you here, and keep building on that, and always give yourself options, because that's especially playing in a professional sports like football, like what I did. You're one play away, and you do, at the moment, you feel like it is going to last forever. You feel like you're untouchable, but that was the thing, and I took that to heart when Sam told me that don't ever forget what got you here, and not just putting in the work, but the whole attitude and staying positive. And I always thought, hey, be a leader, not a follower. All those little things as I was growing up, and so now these young men and women out here, they have NIL and social media and all this, and it's positive and it's negative, but in a way they look at, especially some of the young people will look at this stuff that they're seeing on TikTok and whatnot, and they think automatically, oh, I'm going to be able to do that because I saw it on TikTok, so it's going to happen for me. And then when that reality doesn't happen to them, they don't know what to do with themselves. They're depressed. They're lost because, hey, they had so many likes on TikTok. Why didn't it happen to me? And they just have this false sense of I don't know. It's just a false reality. And so my advice is to just have a plan, have some goals, start out small goals, have a big goal, have a short-term goal, have a long-term goal, but give yourself options. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially in sports. And that's one I've noticed a lot of trend over these last 10, 15 years. The trend is a lot of these parents have their kid doing one thing 12 months out of the year. And all of us, we grew up, like I played hockey. I played a little baseball. I ran track, football. It's not, you can't put all your eggs in one little basket. And then when things go awry, you're lost. You don't know what to do. And you didn't give yourself options. And so, and the big thing is, it's student athlete. I mean, that's exactly what it is. You're a student athlete. They think they can go make a little highlight video catching balls with one hand on TikTok, and they get all these likes, and then they have a coach call them, and they think that's all it's about. But you got to be a student athlete. And like I see my older son now, Sanjay, he did his thing, played 5 years. COVID hit, everything came to a halt, but he easily pivoted. And he's like, hey, I got a degree from Northwestern University, went and got his master's, and he's a wanted man in other ways now. And that's what it's all about. You gotta give yourself options,
Yeah.
and it'll be all good.
Now, Sean, I've got a couple of minutes before wrapping up, and I've got a few important questions I want to ask, a few more important questions I want to ask. One of those things, though, if you can give me about a couple of minutes and just elaborate on when you played high school football, when you played sports in high school, and what's the biggest differences between when you played and when your son played in this generation?
So my son now, Xavier, for one, again, social media is a big part of things. What is it? Where all their highlights are automatically Huddle. Yeah,
Yeah.
Huddle. The big recruiting services and all that. It was, and I still have my book now, and I showed my kids. I said, my Huddle and all this NSCA whatever recruiting stuff. It was this book, and I had to pay to get in it. It was going into my senior year. It was called Who's Who in high school in America high school football, and it was this book, and it took a few months to come out, but we had to pay our little fee, and they wanted our height, weight, and school, etc. And that's all we had was this book, Who's Who in high school football, and then there was one show, and actually a friend of mine, Rod Smith from Roseville, he was featured on it. It was Scholastic Sports America. I don't know if you remember that show.
Sounds familiar.
And Scholastic Sports America, and that was pretty much it. But the basics are still the same. I know there's a lot of specialized centers now, and they get their personal trainers, and that's all good. Unfortunately, I think people and a lot of the parents are still trying to live through their kid, and they're just having them channel just in one sport. I think they're doing a disservice to their kid. We played football in the street. We had to watch out running into the parked car and all that. But that gave you character, that gave you skills. There's none of that now. They go to the health club, and there's no such thing as, oh, I'm gonna run up to the park, put up some shots, or we're gonna go play some touch up at the park. That's like non-existent now, and that kind of blows my mind. And so it'd be nice if they could go back to that. It's all good to have a lot of the specialized stuff. And for one, again, we didn't grow up with a lot of money. There's a lot of kids out in the suburb. Fortunately, they can do that, but there's also a lot of kids that they don't have that one-on-one coach, etc. I just think if you can just still stick to the basics, find a heel, put in that work, run those heels, get in that weight room, because those are the basic building blocks. And then when you get up to that next level, you get up to college, etc. You have the coaching staff, they have the facility to take over, but you have to have all those basic building blocks, and just find a heel, find some sand to go running. I'm kind of old school like that.
Well, I tell you what, man, I think that's impressive, and your concept and everything, because things have changed over the years. So we're going to have to really look and see how things are going to go in the next 10 years from now. Hopefully, if things are can be better than what they are right now. I want to ask you though, how can all the listeners and everybody that's watching, how can people follow you?
Oh, well, like I said, I'm kind of old school, so I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. Yeah, my kids kind of tease me. I had Twitter for a minute, but that Elon Musk, he's acting a fool, so I cut all that. But I have Instagram, and then of course I have my professional link on LinkedIn. But I think that's one thing I'm just gonna kind of work on. My wife is because I do a little bit of public speaking and that sort of thing, and I like talking to the younger generation, and so I enjoy doing that. I might start doing that a little more often. So, but right now, pretty much Facebook and then LinkedIn.
Well, thank you very much for that. Look, before we wrap up, now I want to find out, what is Sean Lumpkin's inspirational quote?
Oh man, well, my kids, I would almost guess if my kids were on here, if you asked Sanjay or Sierra, and then Xavier, I always like letting them know, and I send them a text every once in a while. If you do good things will happen. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. You put in work, and I just tell them, you are who you think you are, and you will do what you think you can do, and trust your abilities. And my daughter, just when I dropped her off last week, she looked at me, and I just, because she's new, she's freshman on the team. They had their first practice, and I just looked at her and I said, "Hey, you have all the skills. You're ready." I said, "See here, like I always tell you, trust your ability." She goes, "Dad, I knew you were gonna say that." I'm like, "It's true. You trust your abilities, and especially people that don't know you. How are they to know what you can or can't do unless you know what you can do yourself? Trust your abilities. Always trust your ability, and you'll be just fine."
Most definitely. Sean, look, man, I want to thank you for joining Coach Leah's After the Whistle today. I just think that the information that you have offered and the information about your life and what you shared with us can inspire a lot of people. And so thank you very much for just taking time out of your schedule to being on the show today. And looking forward to connecting with you because, like I said, we have a lot in common.
Oh, no. Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate it again. Thank you, Leah, if she's able to watch. I know she was getting over a little cold, and so again, appreciate it. And I'd love to be back in the future if you'll have me.
Most definitely. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. Look, once again, it's been a great time spending time with you today on Coach Leah's After the Whistle. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining in with us today, because your presence here is what makes everything work like it works today. And that's, keeping, everything real on our show, and not only being able to bring you information, but you, the listeners, you help make us who we are as well. So we would definitely want you to go and subscribe. Get on our YouTube channel and subscribe on youtube.com / Insight News MN / streams. We want you to be a part of this great family and want you to take time to see some of the live streams that we've had, both past and current. We want to thank each and every one of you for being on the show today with us. Look, there's going to be something coming up on the next episode. I want you to stay tuned. I've had a wonderful time being the guest host, but Coach Leah's got something coming up for you all. I don't want to spoil it. I just want to say, make sure you tell your friends to get on Insight News on Coach Leah's After the Whistle. Make sure you come to Coach Leah's After the Whistle on the next episode, because Coach Leah's got some great things coming up, some topics coming up, but who she's got on the show you don't want to miss. So make sure you stay tuned. Look, this is Brian Spann, the Spann Man, just saying thank you for allowing me to be the guest host and spending time with you today. I want you to have a safe day today, and remember, hold it down, stay above the ground.